it wasn't necessarily addressed as a question. It was more of a statement, but I kind of reworded it into a question because I think it's easier to answer that way. And the question is, what is the best way to do a postcard mailing for our church? I send out reminder postcards, usually 8.5 by 5.5, so that's a half sheet, as well as do large postcard mailings in the area for special days, fall kickoffs, Easter, etc. Now, there are a number of churches in our area and Central California who are still using print, especially in terms of community mailers and that type of thing. And there are some times when I feel like they are super effective, and other times when I feel like they're not effective at all. And the churches that I talk to would actually echo some of those things. Sometimes they work, and sometimes there's doesn't appear that there's much of a return on the investment at all. So, as I read this question, I'm assuming you're asking that they're really wanting to know about the details of how do I get this thing done. But I think as I look at this challenge, as I look at the church that I worked in and some of the mail challenges that we had in mailing postcards, was that when we had challenges with a postcard working or not working, it was often because we focused on getting it delivered rather than being intentional with it and the strategy that goes behind it. So I want to give you a list here of things that you can do to make sure that your mailings are the most effective that they can be. And the first one is you've got to start with determining the goals and the purpose of this mailer. What are you trying to say? What action do you want people to take? And really, just what is the point of this print piece? Why are we sending this to people? If it's a seasonal event, that almost takes care of itself. But if it's something internal, more, hey, just a reminder this is coming, or here's a sermon series that's coming up, it's not always enough to just inform people. You need to let them know why this is going to be important to them. Something to always think of is, what's in it for me? That's the question that your reader is going to be asking. So you need to know what is in it for them. Why is it important to the life of that person who's going to receive it? So you determine those goals and the purpose of the piece first. And you determine who your audience is. And the reason I say this is that a mailer that you send to the older generation is not going to look the same as a mailer you send to someone in their 30s and 40s. And the reason is that they are looking for very different things in the type of things they read on an ongoing basis. So if you know who you're trying to reach, the type of printed items they're used to reading, it will help you tremendously so you've determined goals, you're determining who you're trying to reach, and the next piece is you're going to design this postcard so that it speaks to that audience and helps you meet your goals. So as you begin thinking about the actual design elements, you want to think about, what is that audience expecting? Okay, does it look like something they'd expect to see in their mailbox? Does it give answers to the questions they're going to be asking? Is there a clear next step that we have made very prominent on this card, so that they know what we want them to do? If it's make a phone call, if it's register online, if it's show up on Sunday, that it isn't buried someplace in the design, that it's nice and clear and bold. Remember that the majority of people skim read. They don't read every word. We spend tons of time making sure it reads right, but people oftentimes skim down a page quickly and they read the bullets and they find out, what do you want me to do? And if it's interesting, then they'll go back and read the whole thing. Okay, so make sure you've got some sort of call to action that's saying, this is the next step I want you to take. I created a piece, it's probably been 5-6 years ago, as a concept for Easter, and I delivered it to our pastor, and he looked at it and he said, this is absolutely amazing, but it doesn't meet our church for where we are in the life of our body. It is too progressive creatively to match the reality of who we are. And it was a huge learning moment for me to go, oh, wow, I've never thought about it that way. Is that, does the creative match who we're trying to reach? So that's what I mean when I say make sure you know your audience and your goals when you're getting creative. And the next thing is you've got to pick how you're going to deliver it. And really, I think this is probably the step you were hoping I'd start with. But if you start with this strategy, trust me, it's going to help you tremendously. But pick how you're going to deliver it. And there's really 3 ways that you can deliver postcards. First one is that you do what's called in-house mailing, meaning someone in the church puts the labels on and you just mail the thing directly out. If you've got more than 200 units, you can qualify to send it as bulk mail. Otherwise, you're just putting stamps on it and sending things out to your church congregation. That's in-house directly from the church. Another option is something called EDDM, which is Every Door Direct Mailing. And it's a service provided by the post office. And you literally can put all of your things together by zip code, take them down to the post office, and they'll give you a discounted postal rate. So you're not paying 44 cents or whatever the full rate is at the time. And they allow you then to reach those specific residences by delivery area, so you can pick carrier route and that type of thing. Your third option is to use a mail house. And with a mail house, you actually submit your postcard to them, and they'll print it for you if you want, but I tended to print it somewhere else where the cost was a little less and just deliver the postcard to them. And they'll set it up for mailing. They'll either print the address directly on it, they'll put sticker labels if necessary. They'll take your mailing list from the church that you provide as a spreadsheet, or they'll actually rent you a list if it's like a special event and you're trying to reach people in a specific area of your community. You can send out a targeted mailing using the mail house. Now, the thing to think about is this, that the mail house gets the absolute lowest postage rate available. And we found, after doing some research and trying a couple projects, that it was oftentimes, if the mailing was large enough, especially if it was a community-wide mailing, that the cost of us hiring the mail house to take care of our mailing and actually saved us enough in the per unit postage to cover the majority of the costs of the mail house. So I went from having this project that would take 6 to 8 hours to manage by the time I printed it, and I got volunteers in, and we got labels on, and we got postage sent out, to I literally spent an hour getting a hold of the mail house, getting stuff delivered to them, managing the project, and I never had to think about it again. So very quickly, the dollars started adding up, and we went, wow, it's like $30 more, and we don't have to think about it, and I saved 5 hours. That was a pretty easy discussion for us to have and for me to justify to the business administrator. So just something to think about. So you pick your delivery method and then go print your postcard. And you just got to make sure that you meet whatever specifications are required for the method of how you're delivering your cards. And what I mean is that Every Door Direct Mailing has some specific things about, like, the weight of the paper, the finish of the paper, so that it meets and runs through their machines at the Postal Service really fast. So those are all available online through USPS.com. And so just make sure that when you send something to print that it meets those specs. And then I mail the card out. And something just to think about, ran into it a few times over the years, is Postal Service doesn't let you invoice costs for mailing. So you've got to have money either in your Postal Service account when you go to send that mailing, or you got to have a check available that you can take to the mail house or to the post office and say, here's the check to cover this postage, send this thing out for me. Otherwise, if you're like a typical church, you've got to go back, get a check requisition, wait a couple days, get that check, deliver it back with the mailing, and you've lost a few days in your mailing window. So just something to think about is make sure you've got cash ready to go to mail that card. And the last thing, and this is one of the most important things because it comes back to strategy, is track your results. Some churches are having great results from mailing, other churches aren't. And you've just got to know what's working and what's not. So make a list, count how many phone calls you get, count how many emails you get, how many web visits you get from that postcard. Make sure you know, did it work? And if it did, why did it? And how can we do it again? And if it didn't work, then don't be afraid to say, maybe we need to look at another method of communicating for the next time around. And I also make lists of the questions you're getting from people about that flyer so that you've got answers for them, but also so you can think, last time we got 5 questions about this. Maybe we need to rethink how we verbalize it in our communications so you can learn and grow from it, because that's how strategy works, is to learn and grow from it. Have a church communication question you would like answered? Submit your question today at rad-ideas.com/askRadIdeas.